So we're going to be doing a demonstration. I'm going to be doing a demonstration of our John Henry scarper. It's for scarping plywood. Do I need to talk louder? Just checking. So I have an example of some plywood that I scarped years ago. I keep this around because, wow, I trust myself. So this scarper can scarf up to 1/2 inch plywood. And if you want to do a step scarf, you can go up to 3/4. But step scarf takes a lot of practice and more care than doing a straight scarf. Now, I've done step scarf on plastic because you don't want the feather edge on plastic. But also I used it on a router. I didn't use this, but I could have. It would have worked. So our planer is a Makita. I got the plane number. If you're going to be doing more than just one or even one, I buy a set of blades for it. Genuine blades are $22, knockoff are $10. Yeah, they're one-sided, you use them. Generally, these are probably worn out already because I've practiced with them. So if you're going to use it, just figure, buy the cost of blades, leave the best blades with it. There were another set somewhere, but they're long gone now. They may show up, hard to say. But if you want a really good scarf, if you want a really quality work, buy yourself a set of blades. It'll make it work better. Dave Nichols has written instructions. It's on Duckworks magazine. I have the link if anybody wants it. His instructions are very, very good on how to use this and set this up. So I set this up for a 7-to-1 scarf. So that lets me do a 1/2 inch. In this case, I'm doing 2 sheets of 1/2 inch plywood, or 1/4 inch plywood to make the 1/2 inch. So you can do a more shallow scarf, but we're limited to 1/2 inch on this. And it's about 8-to-1, but I find 7.5-1 works better. So we need a table. I'm using this, and I have my scarfing base, which is 1/2 inch plywood, and I've adjusted the scarf here so it works right at 1/2 inch. I've added in a 1/16 piece of plywood. I made an extra shim, so it works just the way I like it. I also have an extra shim on the upside, so instead of having the 1/8 inch shim, I can do a 1/16 if I need to do a little bit finer tuning. So hopefully, if you're going to use this, just don't throw out the shims because you're like, what is this one being different? Because I found I needed a little bit more resolution on it.
One question.
Sure.
Let's say you buy a new set of blades for it, how much scarfing do you think you can do with that set before you need to replace it?
I did all the scarfing on my Coleman on it, with a set of blades. And when I first started using this, I used John's scarper on Fish Taco, and I used a brand new set of blades on that for all that work.
So quite a few, in other words.
You can do quite a few, yes. You'll just notice that the quality starts going down.
Right.
And so I would assume if you're going to pick this up, that you probably want to get a new blade. You can try it because I recommend I'll get to you want to do 3 practice runs just to make sure you know how to use the machine. And even though I've used it a lot, my first one that I was practicing this week looked pretty bad. It was usable. I could have used it, but it wasn't as good as I've done. So I recommend try it 3 times with scrap wood. If you do the scarf, you can just cut off half of it and just try again. So one piece of wood you can do several practices on until you make sure you get the right pressure, the right feed rate, trying to do all the adjustments you need. And we want to do quality work. We don't want to have something that's like, oh yeah, this is horrible, and it's easy. It's a little money, but yes. But you're also buying, $90 sheets of plywood. Why wouldn't you want to try to use the best quality, get the best quality you could? So on this table, I have some lines drawn. This is the cutting area. So no screws go in the cutting area. Then I have the guide area. No screws go in the guide area. If you're doing full sheets and you don't want holes in them, you can then just put a piece of wood across and clamp it down. But a lot of my stuff, I find I just prefer to screw it into my table, which is what I got for my baseboard. I just screw it in. And to be able to screw it in, I take my inch These are 1.1 I believe, cabinet screws. And I make a spacer so they come out at just under 3/4 of an inch. I guess it's about 7/8 inch, I guess what it is. So that way I'm not going to go into the table. I'm just going in. All I'm doing is trying to hold these in place so they don't move around. When I do 4x8 sheets, I generally run a board across, but I have done screws just so they align correctly. And I put the screw holes in areas that I knew were going to be scrapped. And so I find it, if you use the screws at least for alignment, it helps so nothing moves around while you're scarfing. Because, it can ruin your entire job having something slip around. So that I can do a 4x8 sheet, this is about 60 inches, I think it's 56 inches. So it's more than 48 inches, so I can put some scrap on either end, because as you come off of it, the ends will get a little screwed up. So you want a little scrap to make it better. So I've used this for, let's see, eight years now. I did fish taco with this. As you can see, I got a few spots where I've run into it. Every so often, I just trim a 1/4 inch off of it to get a new fresh edge. So eventually, I'll have to move everything back. So the biggest piece of plywood I made was the sides for fish talk for Be Happy, my Tolman. They were 4 feet by approximately 22 feet, 3 inches, 38 inches thick. I had to do 2 of those. So, they get pretty long if you're doing this. And actually, fortunately, I glued the 2 halves up, and then I was glued the 2 halves on the boat, because trying to do a 22-foot board and move it on the boat was difficult. It was easier to do the 11 and change, put each one on the boat separately, and then scarf it on the boat. But the end scarf's like that. So this thing works really well. It's once you get set up, it goes really fast. The setup does take a bit of time. So I'm going to go ahead and set up right now. So I'm going to be standing over here so you'll be able to see it. So if you have any questions, you just go ahead and ask. So I'm going to do a 7-inch scarf. So the first edge will be right. The bottom piece will be out. And since this is 1/4 inch, I'm going to want to do about 1.5 inches. So I space it back 1.5 inches because I don't want to waste any material that I have to. I got my line here, so I'm going to put one of my blocks here outside of my guideline. That's my little gorilla tool point. It's cheap, and it works pretty well. So I got those in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and do my first one over here, or this one over here. So again, we're trying to make sure I don't go into that area. Yeah.
Hey, Randy, that one didn't pull down.
Yep. Now, where you want to pull down is the edge you're cutting. I have little spacers that I will put in to bend it. And sometimes if you've got a long sheet, I'll just put like a 2x4 at the far end. And that just, you want this edge and this edge to be pushed down against the plywood. This is where you're cutting. If this is sitting up a little bit, that's fine. But yes, you're right. I saw that. I need to fix it. And you want to make sure, do I have a good, this is going to feed right. Because I go from right to left when I do it. It's how it's set up, so you have to do that. So that feels good. I'm happy with that. So that one's giving me a little bit of problem. So we'll just go ahead and we'll put the spacer in there. I just spins it a little bit. Yeah, okay, that's much better. Pushes it down. That's not working. Okay, not perfect, but good enough. That's going to catch a little bit, but we can do with it. Okay, so we got these mounted. So everybody brought their ear protection?
I take my ears out.
Okay, I don't want it plugged in. I'm playing with it. I want to make sure it's not plugged in while I'm playing with it. So I want to make, so it's going to run along here. And so right now, as you can see, it's sitting up above. And as I cut, it will drop down. So I want to make sure all these are tight. We lost the wing nut off of this one. So have to make these. So that's gonna, yep, so we're good. We can come across. Yep, that's gonna work.
Okay, so Randy, where are you applying the pressure?
I'm gonna be pushing on, I'm pushing down and in, so about 45 degrees on this side, and then I'm, with my right, I'm pushing it forward. And I'm not pushing on the uphill side, I'm pushing on the downhill side.
It's okay if that rail isn't touching, this guide isn't touching,
It will once
once you get there?
I get there, it'll stop.
Okay.
So right now, it's not touching anywhere. So I'm gonna push down here, so
Oh,
this
I
one,
see, yeah.
so
It's
this
not
is up
touching
against,
because you're not cutting, you're above the,
yes.
yeah, I get it.
So I'm gonna push and then just go across. Okay? So if someone would plug that in for me. And I'm gonna change into my safety glasses. So that, no, just, okay, you guys should plug it in there. How about in the cord? Wherever, it'll work. Thank you. I've got new safety glasses that are plastic, much lighter than my old ones, which were for glass. Okay, everybody got their hearing aids out? Yeah. I'm just gonna do one cut and then we'll take a look at it. I should have mentioned to turn on the vacuum too. So we just did a little cut here, you know. It's
That's
gonna
why I
take-
was gonna plug it in here.
Yeah, just it was too, it wasn't long enough, that was the only problem. Or you can move it
They can
forward.
move the machine over there and
Yeah.
it'll be long enough.
That's all you've cut. So
That's all I cut. I just did one light cut. So
Oh.
I'm gonna do, I just wanna show you, we're just gonna start taking off the edges here. And we're just gonna keep working our way down. I will if I unplug it. I can show you later, but anytime that's got power on it, just wanna make sure it's not gonna bite anybody. So it's always gonna be pointed down. So here we go. We'll just go do a few more passes. That's not turning on.
Yeah, it did.
The vacuum did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is so noisy I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, it came
Okay.
on.
So we're working our way down. And we'll just keep going now until it gets to where it's finished. bothering me to have to move it.
Randy, what's your depth of cut?
I'm going really, really light. I'm doing 1/32. You can do more.
Would you go more initially and then back off for the final pass?
You could. It just, once I said it, I like just to leave it.
Okay.
But when you're doing this full material, you definitely want to be at 1/32. You could, yes, you could do it at 1/16 or even 1/8 for first couple passes and crank it down if you remember. But if you don't remember, you will know because all of a sudden it's bogging down.
Okay.
It'll sit there and be grinding.
Oh, right. The initial cut, you're cutting very little material as you're going further down. Yeah, the
No,
cut's spreading.
No, I didn't get the setup right. I'm having a little trouble here, but you can see over here, you know, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It's very clean.
That's
Yeah.
5 o'clock.
And so I got my little hand plane, and I'll just come in and just kind of just clean it up a little bit. When you do your hand plane, you go at an angle. And here it's not working. I have to figure out why, but here it came along real nice. So you want to make sure all the stripes look the same, and just clean it up a little bit.
Randy,
Yes.
explain what happened here.
I think that this is being up, that it's
So your scrap piece is a little too high.
my scrap piece is a little too high. Is what the problem is.
So this should have been a little bit thicker.
Yes, and maybe even another one over here to do it. Yes, yeah, it's just sitting up a little bit high.
Oh yeah, you can feel a little
Yeah,
bit
it's
of
just a hair, so it's causing a problem.
So Randy, is it possible to buy one of the, not that anybody needs to, they can use this one obviously, but I don't think those are in production anymore.
No, John Henry Brown, who just passed away, and his wife took over the business. And when I talked to her, she said she wasn't sure what she was going to do. Their webpage is still around, so maybe she's got somebody else doing it, or she sold it. But the only way to order it is you have to call her.
Yeah.
When I talked to her after he passed away, find out if she was going to still sell them. She said she didn't know. He was just going to sell the gems.
Yeah, this was years ago, but I had sent in my order. John Henry died, and they returned my check and said, we're out.
Okay, but their webpage is still there.
Okay.
So it's pygmy.
Oh, there.
Doesn't necessarily saying there's
Yeah.
anything behind it.
So if you had a 4 foot wide piece and you have this, are you going to keep working until everything looks like that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's better than the West Systems
Yeah.
thing we have there, because you can't get it that fine at the West Systems. unless you
No,
pay
it's
it.
a circular saw, it doesn't do the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what I could
smooth
do
type
is
of cut that you can do with the planer.
I could, pull this off, sand it down a little bit, and then just come back and redo it.
When I do a hand scarf, I don't use the jig, but I do use my electric for the first. As you say, you're cutting very little, and you're not really worried about the quality of the cut. So I use my electric until I get down to maybe 1/8 of an inch to go, and then I switch over to a hand plane. But
Um,
that's freehand. That's not with the.
Yeah,
That's the way I do it as well.
I did it freehand on the number 5,
Mhm.
and I swear I'd never do that again.
I kind of enjoy it. I don't know why, but
Well, I didn't have a power plane to start with. It was
Yeah.
a whole
Right.
thing. You know,
Yeah.
it was the bottom, 3/8 inch bottom on my Willie Winship that I was surfing. So it was
yeah.
a full sheet. And trying to do that with a number 5, yes, it wears you out.
It-
I tried
it's
that
good
with-
exercise, no doubt.
I tried that with Leah's boat too, and it was a complete disaster.
Well, I had a good scarf. It just was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then when you're getting down to where you're at this point where you need to be fresh, I was tired.
Yeah.
Not to mention, you probably should stop about there and sharpen it,
Yeah.
because that's when you'll get these little feather ends will start tearing out.
Yeah.
And that just means you need it to be even sharper, even if it seems like it's really sharp.
Yeah.
It's not sharp enough.
Yeah. On this one, I got a little bit
Mm-hmm.
tear out on that side.
Clean on that one, yeah.
Clean on that one, yes. And when you're gluing them up, I pull it apart 1/16 of an inch, which at the 7-in-1 scarf means it's actually 1/28 or whatever it works out to be.
Yeah.
That allows for the colloidal silica in the epoxy because you're adding some thickness to it. And then I did end up with a little roughness there. You sand it, you fill it, you go on. And you can see Mark's doing the same. Well, his are butt joints, but
Well,
maybe
there's a scarf in the bottom. It's that last piece of the bottom, the half piece is 12 feet.
so. I just you fill it, you sand it, and you go on.
And it's surprising, even if you're drilling holes to secure your, even when I've done in a shear strake, and I've wound up with a half a dozen screw holes, little filler, moderate attempt to match colors, and no one's ever going to notice the hue. So it's easy enough, if you need to use screws to hold things in place, put them in there. Because it's way worse if anything slips while you're scarfing. That's new plywood time.
Yeah. So I'm doing fish taco. I knew where things were, so I was able to put the screws where the scrap was. So I didn't worry about my Coleman. I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
So even though I had a board going across, I still used 2 screws just to keep everything from moving. And it just, you don't want it to move. That is just gonna. Well, one, it's frustrating. You can fix it. Any of these mistakes can be fixed, but it's just frustrating if you screw it up. And it's just, they're small holes.
Randy, when you glue them up, do you put tape adjacent to the glue on,
So-
on the scarf? Then when you're getting the
I put
pieces together?
6 mil plastic down,
Yeah,
much wider.
yeah.
I place the bottom piece first,
Sorry, yeah.
and if you're not putting screw holes in it, I put blocks to hold it in place, so it's not going to move. So
Okay.
I'll have several blocks placed on it, and then I'll come in with the second sheet. I'll place it where I want, and then again I'll have blocks to hold it in place, so it'll fit right in.
Okay.
Then I have a piece of plywood that I have, which is, again, 60 inches long, about 8 inches wide, bunch of holes drilled in it, so I can screw in through the scarf joint. And I do that. You can just put a board across it, but you want something thick, like 3/4 inch plywood to push in it. So my base is 3/4 inch plywood, my top is 3/4. You're pressing them together.
Okay.
So then I will, top sheet I'll flip over, and then I will do the neat epoxy on the joint, let it soak in, give it 5 minutes, and then come back. If it needs more, you give some more. And then I come in and I put a thin layer of epoxy thickened with silica,
Yeah.
and it's the colloidal silica, and I'd probably say it's no more than mayonnaise. I mean, it's pretty thin.
Okay.
And you put that on, you want it to really be thin. Then you flip that sheet over, you already got your line
blocks
marks, you
in
got your
place,
blocks
put
that
your
fit the right
blocks.
place, and then you clamp it down, whether using screws or a board across.
Okay.
And if you're doing a board, take a little bit off the end so it's got a slight shallow, so when you push it down, you get even pressure across it. Because usually they're clamping. Some people build up these big rigs where they're pushing down from the ceiling. It seems like a lot of work.
Online I saw some of this looks kind of elaborate.
Yeah.
I just screwed it down. Mine seemed to work. Well.
Yeah, I just screw them down now because I don't like it bright work.
Okay.
I don't want to maintain bright work, so I just screw the holes and I fill it.
It's a long way to the ceiling.
It's a long way to
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Especially in here.
Yeah.
It's just so, sorry, I don't remember your name. You want to do a, so it's on an angle, you're cutting on an angle. Big blade, so it's slightly skewed. So it's spinning, so, yeah, so it's going this direction, it's going along, taking that material. And they're sharp. Now, I can look at this one right now, and I can tell it's dull. The way the dull is shiny on the edge. You got an edge to the blade, so that blade is dull now. Everybody knows that. If you can see an edge on your blade,
Plane or
your
whatever.
plain blade, they're dull.
Unless you put,
You want an edge?
I-
Get a shiny edge?
no, if you do a micro bevel,
Oh.
you will have a trend.
Yeah, you'll see the micro bevel. Yes.
That's what if you put it there, then
Yeah.
you will have a shiny edge. But
Yeah.
the way they come from out of the box,
And I used to shave the back of my hand when I was making sure my blades were sharp. End up with no hair on the left-hand side, though. And don't cut yourself. I have not, but yeah. The only time I've cut myself was I sharpened my draw knife, got really, really sharp. I wrapped it in a paper towel, or not a paper towel, in t-shirt material, wrapped it in it, and I picked it up, and it sliced through the t-shirt into my thumb. It was definitely sharp. And the thing is, it's that sharp, it didn't hurt. You know, it stung, but it didn't hurt because it was so sharp.
I bet you never wore that t-shirt.
No, I didn't. Not with all that blood on it. So, any questions?
I got one, Randy. Let's assume you're doing, you got two pieces of 4x8.
Mhm.
Or what is your setup table for stuff that big? You do it on the floor? Do you?
So
do you
for
have a whole bunch of sawhorses, or how do you do that?
I made a 16 by 4 table that has 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood on it.
Uh-huh.
And I do it on that. And I did that for fish taco, and I did that for my Tolman.
Okay.
Be happy. And I do everything on that.
And that's kind of a permanent table in your shop now, or do you break
No,
it down?
I break it down, but when you're trying to do all the cutting and the scarfing and the gluing, I put the fiberglass on the inside of all the plywood ahead of time. The outside gets done on the boat, but I do the inside. All that's done. And then all those pieces that you made get set aside, and I break down the table, and then I build the building rack for the boat.